The ego image that's arising is the source of all of our insecurities, of all of our feelings of separateness. When we're feeling like there's something wrong with us, there's something different about us, that suffering and anxiety that arises because of that, it's all due to the ego. And if we are going to abandon the ego in order to know our true nature, to know that the awakened nature of peace and joy and love, then we have to be clear about the suffering of the ego and how we keep identifying with this, that this is why we are suffering. This is why we feel such insecurity all the time. So the ego arises through thoughts, very specific thoughts, thoughts about me, I thoughts, right? Thoughts about what do they think about me? And what do I think about me? What's going to happen to me? And out of these thoughts arises an image of who we think we are. And we are obsessed with this image. We are trying to make this image fixed and permanent and happy, because this is who we believe we are. When we're asked, how are we kind of think about that image. Is everything good right now? How's my little image? My image is all right. Is your image all right? No, my image is a little shaky today. How's your image? Right? It's not based on reality, what's happening around us. It's based on our perception of our reality and this little image. And it can be something so slight, so simple. We can be, walking along the street, and let's say we're totally present and we're hearing the birds and we're seeing all the beautiful colors and we're smelling the fragrances and we're here, we're present. There's no image, which of course is why we feel so good. So we're here, and then maybe a car goes by and it's someone that we know, and we see them and we see they're looking right at us, and we wave and they don't wave back, and they just give us this really unkind, really mean look, and then just go right on driving. And in a minute, we experience, in a nanosecond, our ego has popped up. We're wounded. We're hurt. What's wrong with me? Why didn't they acknowledge me? Something must have happened. What did I do? That is our immediate thought. I must have done something wrong. Let me start reviewing all of our past interactions. Our immediate thought is to assume we've done something wrong. Our immediate thought is to assume that it was about us, that it couldn't possibly have been anything else other than we've done something. And we know it, and maybe it's not in that situation. Maybe it's your boss walks by you in the morning and doesn't greet you as well as you would like him to greet you, or the waitress, ignored you and didn't bring your extra side of French fries or something. Like, we're so easily slighted, and we go up into our ego and think and take it personally. It's something wrong with me that they're saying about me that gives us that feeling of being insecure. It makes us feel separate, that makes us feel disconnected. And even if we're talking about it with one of our friends later, and we're telling them what happened with our boss, the waiter, the person that drove by, and because they don't have an image invested in it, they can see it a little more clearly and say, it probably had nothing to do with you. They probably didn't see you. I know you said they were looking right at you, but we don't know what was going on in their heads. We don't know what thoughts they were having. And so why don't you just give them the benefit of the doubt and let it go? But we don't let it go. It keeps coming up, and maybe for the rest of the day or that night. We know how that is. It can stay with us, sometimes into the next day. That every time those thoughts arise, along comes that unworthy image. And every time those thoughts go away, that unworthy image goes away. And so while we're not thinking about it nonstop, we get distracted for a bit, the image goes away, we feel all right again. And then we remember, and the thoughts come up again, the unworthy thoughts, the unworthy image, the insecurity, the anxiety about me and my place and what's going to happen to me because I was rejected, I was slighted. How quickly it just keeps coming up and disappearing. And we think, the problem is that I was ignored. I was slighted in some way. The problem is that we keep thinking about it, trying to find a solution with the same thoughts that created the problem in the first place. Because we will never find resolution through egoic thoughts. We'll never find security. We'll never feel confident. We'll never feel assured through egoic thoughts. It is their very nature to give us this sense of lack, of not feeling good, of feeling insecure about ourselves. And so all we're doing is drawing out this cycle. We're never finding security there. It's the ego image which created the insecurity to begin with. And so we do need to abandon this identification with this ego image. And I'm not suggesting that it is easy. It's not easy. But what's the alternative? Feeling slighted every time someone looks at us the wrong way? Taking everything personally? Making everything bigger than it really is? Carrying around this burden of this unworthy image a lot of the time? So yes, it's not easy to abandon it. We could stay with it. It hasn't been very helpful. We haven't enjoyed it. This is what has brought most of us to the spiritual path, probably all of us to the spiritual path, is that we're tired of carrying around these images. And so we need to understand the nature of our ego. It arises through these thoughts, I thoughts, thoughts about me. And then as soon as those thoughts go away, so does that image. It's not that our ego image becomes smaller, it kind of goes into hibernation for a while. It's not real. It's an illusion. It only exists with these types of thoughts. If you're not thinking about yourself, there's no ego image. But the moment you think about yourself, you split yourself into two. This is where the insecurity comes from. This is where the anxiety comes from, the separation. The moment I think, oh, me, and I'm getting something I don't want, the slight, the rejection, the criticism, the blame, the bill, the discomfort, the moment I think me getting this, subject and object, I have split myself into two, and in some way I am lacking. That's the problem. And so to work with this, we slowly abandon or let go of the ego images with little things, little slights, little disappointments, little rejections. And we work on those little things and we see, I'm suffering right now because I'm thinking about me, not what they did. They are not the problem. I'm the problem. I won't stop thinking about it. I'm not saying that it doesn't hurt in that moment when someone rejects us or criticizes us or disappoints us in some way. But how many things are we still carrying around that happened days ago, weeks ago, months ago, years ago? Like, it happened. Everyone experiences that. It happens and it passes away. And that we are able to walk away and not attach to the image. And so we work with it with little things. And we see in our experience that when we let it go, we feel better. We don't feel insecure anymore. We're not so anxious anymore. That we're not putting ourselves in this precarious position because we can't control the world. We can't control what everyone's going to do. We can't control what everyone's going to think about us. All we can control is us. And that's within our power. We can retrain ourselves to slowly abandon these negative mind states, to see the impermanent nature of the ego, to be really clear. You will never find resolution through egoic thoughts. We have to abandon the thoughts. The image arises with the thoughts. And this image of who we think we are is not who we are. So we work with it slowly. And this doesn't mean that we don't care and that we say, well, I just don't care about anything anymore. I'm indifferent. It doesn't mean that. It means, of course, we're still, I think, our kindness practice, number one, our compassion practices. As long as we're being kind, as we're being honest, we're, giving others the benefit of the doubt, being more forgiving of others. But even in those situations, it doesn't matter how kind we are. Sometimes someone's going to be, still offend us in some way. But as long as we're always being kind and we're doing our best not to cause any harm, it makes it much easier for us to abandon the ego identification, those images in that moment. And the more we start to trust it, so being more mindful, seeing when it's arising or suffering, the ego will always point our attention outwards. They're the problem. They're not the problem. The problem is that we are thinking about ourselves. We are making it personal. We make everything personal about ourselves, and we create an image out of this every time that we identify with. And as long as we are identifying with these ego images, then we will never experience our true nature of who we really are, because it will always be covered up through our identification of the ego that is the source of all of our unhappiness, our insecurities, our anxiety, our suffering.